In this first example, we're going to take a look at a few different ways to deal with this problem, a color cast, otherwise known more recently as a white balance issue. Now, this particular one was actually a problem that I introduced myself when I didn't realize that I had my camera set on the wrong white balance. So every single photo I took during this photo shoot had this very bluish cast to it. So yuck. But thankfully there are some ways we can change it. And again, we're going to try and look at a variety of different options so that you have different choices available. If you try one and it doesn't work very well for you, then there's some other fixes available. Now, in the past, I got to be honest and say I wasn't a big fan of anything that had the word auto in it. But these have improved dramatically in the last couple of versions of Photoshop, so now I'm not at least as hesitant as I might have been to at least try it and see what auto color does. That's actually not bad. Now, I happen to know from trying my other technique on this photo that I like the results better on the other one, the other method I'm about to show you, but this still isn't bad. The only thing I don't like about auto color is when people just simply rely on that. So if it works, great. If it doesn't, they're kind of out of luck. So we need to have at least one other option available to us. So option 2 is a variation on something that I first saw Katrine Eisman do a number of years ago, which is a pretty interesting technique. And that is you duplicate the background layer, so Command or Control J, and on the copy that you just created, we're going to do a filter called Blur Average. It takes all those pixels and comes up with a color, which is pretty much the color cast that we have. Now we need to apply that back to the image to fix it, so we do Command and Control I to invert the image, and then we're going to blend it back in again. Now, the way it was shown to me initially, and the way I've read for many years, was to change the blend mode to color and then kind of lower the opacity to taste. And that works, but I found that the thing I didn't like about that method is, or that blend mode, is it always tends to be a little dark, and then I have to lighten the photo up again. So when I was playing around with this, one day I just went through all the blend modes and I found that vivid light actually does a really nice job. So here's the original photo, and here's with the color cast removed, and now you can see it's got a nice bit of brightness to it. So it's kind of a nice look in that way. So what we're going to do here, I'm just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to merge these together in a copy, Command Option Shift E or Control Option Shift E, and I call this Average, just so later on I can actually look at this and compare the results with other methods. So here's another method we're going to try. We're going to go to our Adjustments panel and add a Curves Adjustment. Then I'm going to click on this little On Image control you see right here in Curves. Click once, and now I'm not clicking and dragging, I'm just hovering. I'm just moving my mouse around. And what I'm trying to do is find a point like you see right there where that little circle, so you have the circles moving around. I want to try and find a place where that circle is as close to dead center as possible. And the chances are you'll find several of them. Once you find one, then just pause for a second, hold down the Shift key, and click once. And that will put a little color sampler so we'll be able to go back to it. Because what we need to do is move away from it and then come back. So I'm going to move away, turn off that On Image control, get that middle gray eyedropper, and I'm going to move over here on top of the image. Now I'm going to put the caps lock key on, because see how my two cursors, if I zoom in a little bit, see how they look the same now? I want to position this so it's right on top of here and click once. And you can see there's the results. Now let's turn that curves off and on. One of the reasons I like this method is that it takes away some of the guesswork. It's Photoshop helping me, so instead of just looking at something and saying, I think that looks pretty good. So let's do the same thing now to compare. I'm going to merge that into a new one and call this Curves. So let's compare the difference. Original, our Curves method, and our Average method. When I look at them, comparatively speaking, I'm looking down here in the metal part of this wall. I think this one with Curves, the color looks a little truer. There's not as much blue in there, whereas in here there's still a little blue, but I like the lightness of this one at the top. So the chances are what I'd probably end up doing is using something like Curves and then adjusting it. Now, if you have a whole bunch of these, then there's something to be said for this Average method, because as I'll show you now, that is something you could actually turn into an action. So I'm going to go to my Actions panel. I've already created a folder. I'm going to make a new action. Call it Color Cast Removal. And then all I'm going to record is the steps I did a moment ago. Duplicate the background layer, average blur, invert, change the blend mode to vivid light. Now, if this was going to be for a whole batch of photos, then I would probably also consider recording Save As a JPEG. Now the reason for doing that, I would now stop recording, is if I have a series of them, I can automate this function. To do this, I would find the images that I have that are all the same. So in here I have a folder, and you can see there's a series of images that have the same problem, taking the same time. So we'll select them all in Bridge, go to Photoshop, Batch. It's already got the color cast removal. I'm going to create a folder just so that I have a chance, just in case things don't go as well as I might like. So I've made a folder, and at this point I'm just going to make sure I have this override action save as commands. That means save each one as a JPEG, but don't use the same file name or anything like that. So we're just going to automate that, and then I just run through them all. So let's go back to Bridge now and see how they look. And here's my resulting image. As you can see, they look pretty good. Now they might still need some tweaking, there's no question about that, but still a lot quicker than me opening each one individually. So here back in Photoshop, I've opened another image which has the same problem. Let's try running our action on this one. And again, overall I like it. I think it's just a little dark, but again, that's a simple problem to fix using either levels or curves or something to kind of brighten up our colors a little bit. So before, after. Now just out of interest, let's try this one with our auto color. That's not bad, but it's not quite as bright as I'd like, and that's one of the examples of where you run into the problem sometimes with the auto color. Is it is what it is, but it's still pretty quick, and that's really the point here, is to try to come up with some different options for different situations. So how do we avoid this kind of problem if possible? Well, of course, one of the solutions is in my case here, just make sure you check your camera before you take a whole series of photos. But you can even make your life a whole lot simpler. If you're not sure what white balance to use, then what you want to do is get yourself some form of reference card. This is a set that I have from Weibel. I also call it Weibel, but it's Weibel. And these are a set of reference cards. These are actually not even available. They might have smaller ones. And there's many different options. But what you do in a case like this is, before you take a series of portraits or shots of products, whatever it might be, you take one shot with the card in it and then go from there. So let's look at a couple of different things we can do. If I only have 4 images like this, then what I could do is just open them in Photoshop, which means, of course, they'll each open in separate tabs. So I go to the one that has the gray card in it, and I use curves, Command and Control M. I take the middle gray eyedropper, which is the one for neutral gray, and normally the problem with this is not knowing where to click, but because I have this reference card, I click on that one and then click OK. So now I have 3 other ones that have a similar lighting problem. So all I have to do now is use the keyboard shortcut for curves, which is Command Control M, but throw in the Option key on the Mac, or Alt for Windows. So it would be Command Option M on the Mac, and what that does is it opens with the last setting that I just used. So then I just have to go to each one and do that. Now that's fine when you only have a few of them, but what if you have a whole lot? So let's pretend I have more than just these 4. I have a couple hundred. Even though this is a JPEG, I can take this reference one, press Command and Control R to open it in Camera Raw, and use the white balance tool in Camera Raw to click on and say that's the setting that I like, and then I click Done. So all I've done is I've adjusted this one and sort of recorded the settings. Now all I have to do is select the remainder of my photos. Of course, in this case I only have 3, but let's pretend it's 300 in Bridge. I select them all like this, right or control click on any one of them and choose Develop Settings, Previous Conversion. And it'll take the conversion I just did and apply them without even opening them to the rest. So now the next time I open these, they would open in Camera Raw with this setting already applied, so I could tweak it if necessary, but the majority of the work is done for me.